Hi, I wanted to do another video. Um, I was on the internet and I was looking for ideas for this video. I was having a very hard time finding any articles connected to it. I was having a very hard time finding anything basically connecting to it. The search that I put in was, how is Seattle dealing with the disabled citizens within their city? Well, I typed it in a little different than that, but that's what I was trying to find. I was trying to find information on the people that are on disability and how the skyrise and rent and the skyrise and cost of living is affecting the Seattle's disabled citizens, low income. The city is saying right now that if you're making $60,000 a year as a single male or a single female, then you're basically low income. Well, I'm thinking a little more lower than that. I'm thinking more on the lines of 10,000 a month or less. Because people on disability have to live too. And it's not fair that a select few people in any city should be able to dictate how well everybody lives. If you're able to make $1 million a year, more power to you. I've got nothing against you making that kind of money. But when you make $1 million a year and it affects everybody in the city, because let's face it, if you're able to make all of that money, you're able to buy whatever you want. You don't have to consider the cost unless you're just a cheapskate, a millionaire cheapskate. And I've seen some out there, but they're very far and in between. So if you are making a lot of money, I'm going to say not $1 million a year, but you'd have to be like a CEO of a company or something like Jeff Bezos or somebody like that. But if you're working and you've got a nice job and you're able to make 100 to 200 grand a year, and your job is willing to pay you that's fine. But just take into consideration that if you are making that kind of money, you're affecting the ones that can't afford to go out and just pay for stuff. Like, I've been homeless before. Going on 10 years, I was homeless when I was much younger. I sometimes would be able to go and take $1,000 and just go shopping for clothes, like 2 pairs of slacks, a pair of jeans, couple of shirts, a sweatshirt, maybe, or a nice dress shirt, and a brand new pair of shoes. You know, I could whip through $1,000 in a split second. Well, there's some people that have to take $1,000 and stretch it through the whole month. That's to buy groceries, pay utilities, pay their cell phone bill. If they have internet, pay the internet bill. If they've got an apartment, pay their apartment, pay their rent. And now if you're living in mom and dad's house and you've got no bills whatsoever, you can take $1,000 and you can do pretty good on $1,000 a month. But when the price of hamburger is like $5 or $6 a pound, and a loaf of bread is like $5 and $6 a loaf, and a gallon of milk is $3 and $4 and $5 a gallon, and eggs are like $2, $3 a dozen. There's people that are making less than $1,000 a month on disability and SSI and Social Security and welfare that can't afford to pay that. Now, how do we reconcile that? How do we take our conscience, if we have a conscience, and most of us do, But how do we get past our conscience and like 200 grand a year, go out to a fancy steak restaurant, pay like $300-400 for dinner. That's fine. You earned it. You're making that kind of money. You can go to places like that. But when you can just afford to pay that kind of money, places assume that everybody can afford it, so they bring their prices up. And now the ones that could not afford to eat there would have no choice but to eat there. Well, let's face it, eating at home can be okay. I like a good old bologna sandwich with cheese and mayo and lettuce like the next guy. I love that. But I also like to go and have lobster, and I like to have steak, and I like to go and have barbecued ribs and seafood and things. And when you go to restaurants where a cup of coffee could cost you $10, that's like way out there. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong for people to charge. If you've got clientele for that, that's fine. If the operatic crowd can afford it, more power to them. But I would think that Seattle would offer a wide range of things. Now, speaking of that, you got to forgive me. I tend to run my sentences together, especially even when I type. If you saw my Facebook page, you would really understand. But I have a tendency to ramble, and put things into one complete sentence instead of breaking it up. Now, Seattle, the reason I talk about Seattle so much, even though I do not live there, I live in Minneapolis right now. Seattle is where my heart is at. And it hurts me to see that the city that I love is no longer there anymore. The Seattle that I fell in love with is gone. It's never coming back, because the transplants that have moved to Seattle for the money, the transplants will no longer allow Seattle to be Seattle. It's been changed. It's almost like they've created a Seattle on top of a Seattle. The high cost of living, the economy. They say the economy is booming. The economy is booming. That's code for it's getting expensive. The poor can't afford to live there anymore, so we're going to force them out, and it's going to be nothing but the rich, pretty people. The rich, pretty people. The poor people are no longer desirable anymore. The poor people, and when I say poor, I'm talking under $10,000 a month. Those are destitute. Okay, let me take that back. Those are destitute. 40 to 60 grand, I guess, would be poor. You can no longer afford to have a glass of Cristal with your McRoyale. So it's just getting to the point where it's crazy and it's just stupid, and people that are transplants can't see it. They don't understand because they didn't grow up in Seattle. They have no skin in the game. They don't love Seattle. Not like the ones that were born there and lived there and were there their whole lives. Their parents were there. Their grandparents were there. I mean, I would have loved to have been in Seattle back when Seattle was first getting started. I bumped into Seattle by accident. I really did. I was not born and raised in Seattle, and I guess you could say I was a transplant as well. But Seattle was a city I bumped into by accident because I had met a girl when I was in Topeka, Kansas, when I was hitchhiking around. I had just went through a really bad breakup with my ex-girlfriend's, my son's mother, my ex-girlfriend. And I wasn't allowed to see my son anymore. I'll get into that in another story. But I got stranded in Topeka, Kansas, and I met this girl, Susan, and she was homesick for going back to her mom's and dad's, which happened to be in Everett, Washington. So I took her and we went to Everett, Washington, and that didn't work out between us. So I went to Seattle, and I instantly fell in love with Seattle. I mean, it was just beautiful. The Pike Place Market, the people, the Space Needle, the Pioneer Square, Chinatown, the monorail. It's like, you know, when I got an apartment in Capitol Hill, I lived not too far from where there was a coffee shop and a bakery. And you could smell fresh baked bread wafting through the windows. And the smell of fresh roasted coffee in the air. You couldn't beat it. I mean, it was like just great. So that Seattle is gone. And I understand that. I would love to move back to Seattle. I can't do it when the cost of living is so high now. I have to wait for all the transplants to get kicked out of Seattle. I have to wait for all of the tech companies to leave Seattle. I have to wait for basically Seattle to turn into another Detroit. That's what I'm waiting on, because I can do something there. If I move back to Seattle, I plan on running for mayor of Seattle. Now, I know y'all look at me and you say, well, why would anybody vote for you? I'm not saying anybody would vote for me. That doesn't mean I wouldn't be able to run. Now, I've got a lot of ideas like fixing the homeless problem. Yes, fixing the homeless problem. Dealing with the low-income people that are destitute, making less than $1,000 a month. Also, dealing with the high cost of rent. I've got a way to fix that without suing the state of Seattle, without suing the state of Washington, to get rid of the law that was passed in 1981. I know how to do that now. I've figured it out. I know how to get the cost of rent down to where it's manageable. The rich and the poor can live in Seattle cohesively. I also know how to bring the cost of living down. So I could run for Seattle, the mayor of Seattle, as long as people hear my ideas, as long as people listen to my ideas. That's all that matters, because the ones that can actually get elected and do a good job, that want to help Seattle become Seattle again, that's all I care about. Now, this video was dealing with the poor and the destitute of Seattle. What does Seattle want? What kind of a Seattle does Seattle want to be? The transplants that live there, how much do you care about Seattle? Is Seattle just another place to hang your hat? Is it just another place to buy a house and flip it? Is it just another place to get a high-paying tech job? And is it just another place to get a big paycheck? Is that all Seattle is to you? Because if it is, y'all can take a hike. You can get the heck out of Dodge. Now, if you move to Seattle because you love Seattle and you want Seattle to prosper, then you're more than welcome to stay there. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. This is just a short video. I'm trying to keep them as low as I can, so that way everybody that watches one of my videos won't get bored to death. But if you have a comment about my videos, leave it in the comment section. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. I'll converse with you. If you have an idea that will help me make better videos, let me know. I'm very old school. I'm not very tech savvy. I can't do a lot of fancy displays. Eventually I'll be adding some stuff in once I figure out how to do that, but for right now it's just me talking to you, the viewer. If you think I can do something better that's more interesting, leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you have a suggestion on what can be done to make my videos better, leave a suggestion underneath. If you hate my videos, leave a message and tell me why you hate them. Don't just say, oh, I hate your videos. you scumbag, I hope you die, and then give me a thumbs down. Don't do that. But if you don't like my videos and you have a genuine gripe about what I can do to make them better, please leave it underneath. I'll converse with you, and maybe with your help, my videos can get better. I would love to be able to do this full time, to where I can do 2 or 3 or 4 videos a week. Anyway, I go by the Pauper's Budget on YouTube. That's my channel name. But I also do All Things Considered, because I consider all things. I deal mostly with Seattle, but you never know. I might do a movie review, or I might do a cooking tutorial with my World's Smallest Kitchen tutorial by the Pauper's Budget. I go by the Pauper's Budget because, for one thing, I'm poor and I want to get the most out of the dollar that I can get for those that are not able to make loads of money and have to do the same thing. Anyway, this has been All Things Considered. Thank you for watching my video, for commenting if you can. Have a good night from the Pauper's Budget.